hello, beautiful souls, everyone who is watching this episode. Welcome. I'm so thankful for you to tune in today. In this new episode, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. And to be honest, I consider this a very important topic because as we are growing, developing, and expanding in this society, we are learning more things about ourselves and the world. The world is not becoming so rigid and structured and also logical and rational. Nowadays, we have more creativity, more spontaneity in this society, and this is not a bad thing. This is actually a very good thing. I consider this a very good thing, by the way, because with this way we are learning from other cultures and we are sharing information just as many other years before, but we are not so fixated on thinking that our knowledge, especially in the Western societies, we are not fixated on thinking that our knowledge is the only one which is valid, because especially in the West, people usually think that their knowledge, their wisdom, let's say, it's the only thing that it's modernized, and they completely ignored all generations knowledge and wisdom. And all generations, I'm not talking about the 50s or the 60s, for example. No, I'm going to so many years back then, hundreds and thousands of years ago. This was when knowledge and wisdom were still appreciated, were still held sacred, because many people were keeping this knowledge as in the occult and the forbidden archives, And many of this knowledge as well is still being kept hidden. But I'm sure that you are aware, if you're listening to this podcast, that this knowledge, even if it is kept hidden, part of it is still available to the public. And this is thanks to the age of the internet. We have plenty of information available to us anytime, any moment, everywhere. So with this, I wanted to talk about how Western modern society is remembering through downloads all information. So to get more into context, aside from the coaching, therapy, and healing business I own, I'm also a university student, an economics university student to be more precise. And today I wanted to share an experience I had. So normally I don't attend seminars or master classes, because I have a full schedule. In the morning, I attend my university classes, and then in the evening afternoon, I work in my business. But this time, something told me that why not? Why don't you come to this presentations, to this conference where many professors and students are going to present and talk about their passions, about what they are most excel at, what they are best at. And again, usually I wouldn't go because I know that economics is a very masculine energy area. It's a very masculine energy field where plenty of maths and graphs and logical structured things are used. But in this case, it wasn't the typical economics field branch, to be honest, branch. Yeah, it wasn't the Keynesian neoclassical perspective of economics, it was the Austrian one. And for those who don't know the Austrian School of Economics, which I'm going to talk in some time now, it's a very interesting perspective. It's a very interesting one, way more interesting than the neoclassical way of saying economics in the modern world. And this is something that usually neoclassical economics doesn't mention, but it's about determinism and free will, going to the metaphysics and philosophy. And why did I want to talk about this? Well, I think it's very closely linked to spirituality, to this new age movement people are into. And I found this correlation because, as mentioned before, people are remembering the old wisdom within. So, for those who are new to this Austrian theory of economics, let's just review some key points that make it different from other branches and or perspectives. In the first place, we have the intellectual modesty versus the intellectual arrogance found in modern society, usually and so often, and the intellectual modesty in the Austrian School of Economics, which is the consideration that the human being, the man, cannot reach all information, all truth, all universal truths in every single perspective, which it would be true in a way, because as human beings, we are learning, growing, and expanding every minute, every second, every hour, every day. And even though there is a state of consciousness where you can be aware of your own perspective and other people's perspectives and thoughts, it's not something to believe, I think, that you know all the ultimate truth and that's it, and there's no other way, because your ultimate truth is the only possible perspective in reality, when in truth, that's not true. We have many perspectives, many opinions. We have as many perspectives as opinions as humans on earth. So to know that human beings, in a way, have limits in their knowledge, in their evolutionary path, this is one of the basics of the Austrian evolutionary theory. So what is mostly believed in the usual economics is that the ideas are static, and the graphs to calculate the perfect competition, the perfect price, or anything like that. Then the second point, super important, is the idea of change and the time in the human evolution. I want to say only human, but let's focus on Earth right now. The real value of time, because it's also important to remember that time is not linear. Time is more going into circles, like the past, present, and future are coexisting at the same time. That's why, for example, trauma has an effect on you, even if you are in the present moment and the traumatic event happened in the past. If you didn't heal it yet, trauma is stored in your body. So you are acting from the traumatic event. You are acting, your body as if you were in the past. So, past, present, and future are interconnected. They completely ignore perspective of time. For you to make and understand it better, let's put an example. Let's say, and while constructivism views time as more as a static event, linear and one time, in the Austrian Theory of Economics, time is more subjective because it depends on each individual's you're working and whatever you might be, and you're waiting for your payment, which usually comes, let's say, each month, at the end of each month. But then we have person B, and this person is not working, but he's investing in crypto. And while you see the results and the value of your work based on money at the end of the month, person B might have to wait a little bit longer to receive maybe the same amount of money through crypto. And maybe it is through 3 months, 6 months, or who knows, maybe he or she receives this money in, let's say, a week. So these are two different types of valuing the same goal, the same amount of money, but in a different perspective of time. Another good example we can think about this to put more into perspective is this situation that happens to many of us, I would say all of us, that when we are enjoying an activity, when we are enjoying doing something like reading or doing sport, I don't know, dancing, listening to music, creating art, have you noticed that time seems to pass faster than when we are bored in a class or listening to someone we usually don't pay much attention to? And time here just pass slower. This is another perception of time we can take into account. So the third point is basically one of my favorites because in the Austrian Theory of Economics, they take at the center the analysis of the man, of the human being, and the action that they develop. And from these human actions, many new things appear, such as spontaneous orders or social institutions. However, in the structured society in constructivism, we see the opposite thing, that is objectivism. This belief is based on the thinking that the science is the only thing that can be developed through the pace of objective knowledge. And because of this, we apply the scientific beliefs into, let's say, everything in society, with the area of natural sciences and mathematical calculations. With this, we totally ignore the theory of human action and the theory of entrepreneurial creativity. Creativity, it's found in every human being. We take actions in our everyday lives and we use creativity to solve our problems and our challenges. And what this rational mind patterns fail to see is this creativity that humans have, this spontaneous ability to solve things, to just invent and create new ideas for the problems that we face in our daily lives. Without this, we wouldn't have the inventions that we are currently using and utilizing in our daily lives. From phones to cars to the wheels, everything is due to human creativity. So the fourth point in the Austrian Theory of Economics and in constructivism. In the Austrian Theory of Economics, there's the study of the spontaneous orders and the general laws, and by the way, abstract laws that they regulate. So this means that these orders are the result of human action and creativity. And they're super important for the healthy development of life in society. And these orders from human action, they are the main cause of the apparition of the main traditions and social institutions we find in society. Then we have the opposite in constructivism, which is a belief more centered in organization and mandates. This means that these are based on the development and the study of the organizations only created by man, and of course the mandates that regulate them. They also take into account that society must function only with a hierarchy, a system of hierarchy, this, the politics, and then the bosses, and then you are, the slave, and the working society. It's a pyramidal system, and this is the only way. Like, there's no other way for society to function, which I believe it's quite a very limited programming condition that we are based in society, mainly in education. Like, we are taught that things are like that and there's no other way around it. It has been through years like that, and there's no other way. Creativity is not grown, it's not developed. The next point, pay special attention because it's also one of my favorites. So it's basically the search of general principles and, abstract principles, learning more into philosophy. And so with this, laws of economic tendencies, trends. So I'm sure you just heard this bunch of words and you're not probably understanding the meaning. But basically, this search of laws, they allow human beings to function in society with the most freedom as possible, without putting any limitations, any limits to individuals. And with this, you actually allow individuals and groups to create social orders. But this doesn't mean that social orders or social institutions are bad or negative. It means that they are cooperating and helping each other in their process of human action and creativity. So every individual, basically every individual, is called by their innate ability found in themselves, within themselves. They are called to help each other as they help themselves. This doesn't happen in constructivism. Well, it happens, but through less amount. Because there's this imposition, there's this adding of rules and mandates that you have to follow through a mandatory process. Like you are forced to follow these rules. And there, in the economic field, there's also laws in economy using these natural sciences and then these mathematical terms. So the adding of these rules and mandates, they limit the individual freedom. They limit the natural development, the natural evolutionary development of human beings in society. And they impose this hierarchical pyramidal structure that they don't allow human beings to act with creativity, with their intuition, and with their spontaneous flow. That's why I love this theory a lot, because it actually relates to what we know about spirituality. And this is common sense. You have situations that present to you, and only you can solve them in the best way possible when you're going with the flow, when you're using creativity to solve them in the best way, when you're in tune with the flow of the universe, source, God, and your soul. When you're using this creativity, your intuition, that allows you to properly live, to properly thrive and function in society. The next point is the crucial importance of the respect we have to have in this society for social processes versus the imposition of all kinds of models and structures to control our human action. So, in simple terms, this means that when you are taking action, you are just following a certain pattern. In spirituality, it would be like following the flow. You're listening to your intuition, you're trusting the process. You're trusting the process. You don't need any graphs, any models, anything telling you how to act. You just take action. So let's say I want to set a business of, I don't know, jewelry. I want to sell jewelry and crystals. Crystals. I love them. Anyway, but I don't have any crystals or jewelry. So what do? I start to think and I say, oh, but I know person C sells crystals. So I buy, let's say, an amount of crystals to sell myself. And then this is how I take action to gain more profit. You don't need any graphs, you don't need any models to tell you how to act in society, because this is just a process. We don't think about it, we just act. We follow a trail of thoughts that leads us to our goals, to our dreams. to anything we want to achieve. So just making any models, any static models in society, it is going against the basic fundamental principles of human action and the social order of how we act and the social institutions that we as human beings have and cooperate and, coordinate. And the last point, it's the idea, the concept of freedom. So in constructivism, we usually see there's no restrictions, the lack of restrictions and obstacles for achieving certain goals, certain wishes, certain, dreams. We have the equalitarian perspective. So this means that people are giving the same things and their efforts are not the same. Let's take the example of work. Let's say you have two persons, person A and person B. They both work in an office. Person A is a very hardworking person. However, person B is, a bit lazy. He doesn't value the work he's at, so he doesn't necessarily put the same effort. Some days he doesn't even come to work. But you know what? At the end of the month, they are still paid the same. So this is the difference. In the Austrian School of Economics, they have the idea of justice and private property. And this is actually more fair to individuals that know how to properly utilize their resources and their time, which we can also relate this to real life. In real life, not everyone is the same. You might have grown in a very toxic and unhealthy, dysfunctional family. And you have the story of the two twins. They both grew up in a dysfunctional family. They are both depressed. However, one twin decides to take action and to just do whatever it takes to be a successful man and to actually heal himself, to work on his mental health, and to have a stable source of income. This doesn't happen with the other twin, which keeps to further drown and depression. He is offered help. He has the resources, but he doesn't use them. He continues to further drown in his own miserable life. But it doesn't matter because these two twins had the same trauma. But they used the resources, they used their human action with two completely different methods. So, coming back to the topic of free will, I wanted to talk about determinism, which is mentioned in the Austrian School of Economics, which is basically the course of history. It is a belief that the course of history is fixed by some past or the laws of nature. And if we start to actually dive deep into it, we find a relation between this and how certain people, certain situations are already predetermined by us. When we incarnate, we choose certain experiences and to meet certain people. this is what people usually call fate. But then there's the free will in this metaphysical determination, which means that human beings have free will. We can choose. And there's also the other side of the coin, which I can agree. Even though we have certain things that we chose to experience as a soul, and it is collective consciousness, we also have free will. We can terminate and cut contacts. We can terminate contracts and any other thing that we chose to experience. We can always say, hey, no, I can't end this. I don't want to experience this anymore. And we can quantum leap to another frequency, which is basically choose a different timeline. If you're experiencing suffering in this timeline, you can choose a timeline in your reality where you have happiness or where you're experiencing financial abundance. And one of the keys to quantum leap is to basically reprogram and to reframe your subconscious mind because it's so freaking powerful. So, another interesting term that was mentioned in this conference last week is the epistemological determinism, which means that if we have the knowledge of the initial conditions and laws of nature, everything can be predicted. And I would say this is true, but not completely. Because some examples we can see in society, in this reality, are astrology. People are using astrology to predict some certain events, but they completely forget that the future is not fixed. It's completely changing all the freaking time. There are no fixed timelines. And it's always changing depending on your own individual choices. And the collective consciousness, individual, choices between all human beings. So this means that there's also the epistemological indeterminism, which is the belief that we have limits to scientific knowledge. And it's true. Human scientists on Earth, they don't know everything. They still have a lot to learn, in fact. So, in this duality of reality, I can say that we can agree that there's also a third concept, that there's a metaphysical dualism, which basically includes that we have free will in the metaphysical sense, and at the same time, we have the lack of knowledge of how ideas are formed in mind. Even though, of course, if you are reaching higher states of consciousness, you are reaching a higher state of self-awareness, where you can be aware of your own mental processes, as well as others' forms of mental processes. And how, you might ask? Well, one of the things we know that is happening is basically through telepathy, which is becoming more and more common nowadays. And with time, remember the discussion about time. Time is subjective. We have, let's say, two types of it. We have the time of physics, and then we have the time of memories, which depends on our actions. And as economist Mises said, acting provides the value of time. So it's how you take action, how you value time. You cannot comprehend human history through some economic models or some graphs or some formulas. because there's so much to understand for the human mind that we are yet to know, we are yet to discover. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Please tell me what you think. Like, I'm super excited by new topics coming to Earth, by downloads that we're getting daily, and new ideas are shared, and the information is not so structured. Like, we are basically finally understanding that we are not made to coexist in a society full of rules and limitations. We are free human beings, free cosmic multidimensional beings. And it is our right to reclaim our sovereignty and our true power and potential. Please don't forget to follow and subscribe if you're in YouTube watching this. If you enjoyed this episode, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.